Getting an avoidant to fully commit and stay committed isn't about chasing harder, being more perfect, or convincing them of your worth through constant effort and accommodation. It's about creating specific conditions that allow their nervous system to feel safe enough to choose connection over self-protection consistently over time. Most people approach avoidance with strategies that actually reinforce avoidant patterns rather than challenging them. They pursue when the avoidant withdraws, which confirms the avoidant's fear of engulfment and being controlled. They accommodate endlessly, which teaches the avoidant their patterns have no consequences and can continue indefinitely. They make themselves smaller to fit into the limited space the avoidant offers, which prevents the avoidant from experiencing any motivation to change their behavior. These common approaches guarantee the avoidant will never fully commit because they're operating from anxious attachment rather than secure groundedness. The truth is that getting an avoidant to commit requires you to do the opposite of what your anxiety tells you to do. You have to be willing to lose them to create the possibility of keeping them. You have to maintain your own fullness rather than organizing your life around their availability. You have to require more from them rather than accepting less than you deserve. This approach only works if you're genuinely prepared to walk away, because avoidance can sense when boundaries are bluffs and will test them repeatedly. But when you embody these principles authentically, you create the only conditions under which an avoidant can actually choose commitment. Not because you've manipulated them or played games, but because you've made staying more appealing than running, and you've made their patterns too costly to maintain without facing real consequences. Become genuinely okay with losing them. The foundation of getting an avoidant to commit is being authentically prepared to lose them if they can't meet your needs. This isn't a strategy or manipulation tactic you deploy to get a specific result. This is real internal work where you build a life so full and satisfying that whether this particular avoidant can show up for you becomes less important than maintaining your own peace and standards. Avoidants have finely tuned sensors for desperation and neediness that have been honed through years of defending against it. When they sense you need them more than you need your own well-being, when they feel your worth is tied to their validation, they feel suffocated and withdraw even further. But when they sense you're genuinely okay either way, that you want them but don't need them to survive or be happy, something in their nervous system relaxes and opens up. Being okay with losing them means you've done the grief work of accepting that this person might never be capable of meeting your needs no matter how much you want them to. You've imagined your life without them in detail and recognized you'll survive and even thrive in that scenario. You've stopped making them the center of your emotional world and started building fulfillment from multiple sources, including yourself, your work, your friendships, your passions, your personal growth. This foundation isn't about pretending indifference while secretly hoping they'll commit. It's about actual indifference to the outcome, because you know your worth isn't dependent on whether this avoidant chooses you or validates your value. The authenticity of this stance is what makes it powerful with avoidance. Avoidance can tell the difference between someone who's genuinely grounded in their own worth and someone who's performing groundedness while desperately hoping for commitment underneath. When you're truly okay with losing them, it shows up in how you respond to their withdrawal without panic, how you maintain your own life regardless of their availability, how you enforce boundaries without anger or manipulation. The avoidant feels this solid groundedness and for the first time experiences the possibility that commitment might not mean losing themselves or being consumed by someone else's needs. stop pursuing and start living your full life. The most counterintuitive step in getting an avoidant to commit is to stop organizing your life around their availability and start building a genuinely full existence, whether they're present or not. Avoidants are conditioned to expect pursuit from partners. When they withdraw, people chase them harder. When they're distant, people try harder to close the gap and restore connection. This pursuit confirms their fears about relationships being suffocating, demanding, and controlling. But when you stop pursuing and instead focus your energy on your own life, work, friendships, interests, personal growth, and fulfillment, the dynamic completely shifts in ways that make commitment more rather than less likely. Living your full life means you're not constantly available when the avoidant decides they want contact after a period of distance. You have plans that matter to you. You have commitments you honor. You have a schedule that doesn't automatically reorganize around their sporadic desire for connection whenever it suits them. Subscribe for insights into attachment psychology that help you understand why these counterintuitive approaches actually work with avoidant patterns when conventional wisdom fails. This isn't about playing hard to get or making yourself artificially scarce through manipulation. This is about genuinely building a life that fulfills you so completely that the avoidant becomes an addition to your fullness rather than the source of it or the center of your emotional world. The full life approach creates healthy tension that motivates commitment. The avoidant is used to people waiting around for them, always accessible, constantly hoping for more attention and connection. But when you're genuinely busy with your own meaningful activities, when you're not always available on their terms, when you have joy and fulfillment that doesn't include them, they start to wonder about their position in your life. They begin to fear losing access to you. This fear is what motivates avoidants to move closer rather than pulling away. They commit not because you've chased them into it, but because they don't want to lose someone who clearly doesn't need them but genuinely wants them. Require consistency and enforce real consequences. Avoidants will only commit when their patterns start having real consequences that matter more than the discomfort of change. If you continue accepting inconsistency, emotional unavailability, and sporadic presence, the avoidant has no motivation to do the difficult work of showing up differently. You're teaching them that their patterns are sustainable, that they can have connection without commitment, that they can withdraw without losing you. To get an avoidant to commit, you have to require consistency and actually follow through with consequences when that consistency isn't provided. Requiring consistency means being clear about your non-negotiable needs. You might say something like, I need regular communication and follow through on plans. I need emotional availability, not just physical presence. I need to see sustained effort over months, not just temporary good behavior. If you can't provide this, I understand, but I won't continue in a dynamic that doesn't meet my needs. This clarity gives the avoidant explicit information about what's required and what's at stake. They can then make an informed choice about whether they're capable of meeting those requirements. Enforcing consequences means actually following through when boundaries are crossed. If you say you need consistency but accept inconsistency without consequence, your words are meaningless. The consequence might be reducing your emotional investment, spending less time with them, or completely disengaging if patterns continue. The key is that consequences must be about protecting yourself, not punishing them. You're not withdrawing to hurt them or manipulate them into change. You're protecting your own well-being from patterns that harm you. When the avoidant sees that their patterns genuinely cost them access to you, they're forced to choose between their comfort zone and the relationship. Never make yourself smaller to fit their limitations. One of the biggest mistakes people make with avoidance is diminishing themselves to fit into the limited space the avoidant offers. They suppress their needs, hide their emotions, make themselves less complicated to avoid triggering the avoidance withdrawal. This accommodation seems like love, but it's actually preventing the avoidant from experiencing any pressure to grow. To get an avoidant to commit, you have to show up as your full self with all your needs, emotions, and complexity, and let the avoidant decide if they can handle you. Showing up fully means expressing your emotions without editing them for the avoidant's comfort. When you're hurt by their withdrawal, you say so. When you need reassurance, you ask for it. When their behavior isn't acceptable, you name it clearly. You're not performing emotional composure to make yourself easier to be with. You're being authentically human with the full range of emotional experience that entails. This authenticity creates real intimacy pressure that forces the avoidant to either step up or step out. Not making yourself smaller also means maintaining your standards and requirements, even when the avoidant suggests they're too much or unreasonable. Avoidants often frame normal relationship needs as excessive demands to justify their patterns. They'll make you feel like wanting consistency, emotional availability, or commitment is asking too much. But when you refuse to internalize their framing and instead maintain that your needs are reasonable and deserve to be met, you create a choice point. The avoidant can either acknowledge your needs are valid and work to meet them, or they can maintain their patterns and lose you. Either outcome gives you information about whether this avoidant is capable of real relationship. Be the most interesting option by being genuinely fulfilled. Avoidants commit when they perceive you as the most valuable option in their landscape, and they fear losing access to you. This doesn't mean being perfect or performing worthiness. It means being so genuinely fulfilled and interesting that the avoidant recognizes you as rare and irreplaceable. When you're living a full life, growing, pursuing your interests, maintaining rich friendships, and clearly thriving whether they're present or not, you become infinitely more attractive than when you're obviously organizing your life around them. Being interesting means you have things going on that don't involve the avoidant. You have stories to tell, experiences you're having, growth you're pursuing, challenges you're navigating. When you interact with the avoidant, you're bringing energy from your full life rather than expecting them to be your life. This dynamic is attractive to avoidance because it means relationship with you is enriching rather than depleting. They're getting access to someone dynamic and evolving rather than someone static and waiting. The fulfillment also creates natural scarcity. When you're genuinely busy and fulfilled, you're not always available. The avoidant has to work to get time with you. They have to plan ahead. They have to show up when they say they will or risk missing opportunities to connect. This natural scarcity makes them value the time they do get with you and motivates them to secure more consistent access through commitment. You're not artificially creating scarcity through games. You're naturally scarce because your life is legitimately full, and that authentic scarcity makes commitment appealing to the avoidant who doesn't want to lose their spot in your life. Show them secure attachment through your behavior. Avoidants commit when they experience what secure attachment feels like and recognize it's better than their defended patterns. You can't tell an avoidant to be secure. You have to show them through your own behavior what secure attachment looks like so they have a model to follow. This means responding to their patterns with groundedness rather than anxiety, maintaining boundaries without punishment, and staying connected to yourself even when they're disconnected. Modeling security means you don't chase when they withdraw. You give them space while maintaining your own center. You don't panic when they're distant. You trust that if they want connection, they'll move toward it, and if they don't, that's information about their capacity rather than your worth. You don't try to control their behavior or manipulate them into showing up differently. You simply maintain your standards and let them decide how they want to participate. The secure modeling also includes being consistent yourself. You follow through on what you say you'll do. You're reliable in your presence. You manage your own emotions rather than making them the avoidance responsibility. When conflict arises, you stay present and work toward resolution rather than withdrawing or attacking. This consistency shows the avoidant that secure attachment is possible, that people can be trusted, that intimacy doesn't have to be dangerous. Over time, if the avoidant is capable of growth, they begin to mirror your security because they've experienced how much better it feels than their defended patterns. Make their patterns more uncomfortable than change. Avoidants only commit when staying in their patterns becomes more uncomfortable than the vulnerability of change. As long as their patterns are working, as long as they can have connection without commitment, as long as their withdrawal doesn't cost them anything significant, they have no motivation to do the difficult work of transformation. Your job is to make their patterns stop working by creating real discomfort through consequences that matter to them. Making patterns uncomfortable means the avoidant experiences genuine loss when they run their patterns. When they withdraw, you're not there waiting when they decide to come back. You've moved on with your life and they have to work to re-engage. When they're emotionally unavailable, you withdraw your emotional investment and they notice the difference in how you relate to them. When they're inconsistent, you become less available and they realize they're losing access to you. These consequences create discomfort that accumulates over time. The discomfort must be real, not performed. Avoidance can tell when you're strategically withdrawing to manipulate them versus genuinely protecting yourself. The consequences have to come from your authentic need to maintain your own well-being, not from trying to change their behavior. When the discomfort is real, when the avoidant genuinely feels they're losing someone valuable because of their patterns, they're forced to confront whether their defense mechanisms are worth the cost. Some avoidants will choose their patterns. That's important information. But some will choose the relationship and do the work to change, and those are the ones capable of real commitment. Give them time but not unlimited patience. Getting an avoidant to commit requires patience because transformation takes time. But it also requires clear timelines because patience without limits enables continued patterns. You need to find the balance between giving the avoidant space to grow and not sacrificing years of your life waiting for change that may never come. This means being clear with yourself and eventually with them about how long you're willing to invest in seeing if they can meet your needs. Giving time means recognizing that avoidance can't change overnight. If they're doing genuine work, going to therapy, showing consistent small improvements over weeks and months, that's worth patience. You're watching for trajectory rather than instant transformation. But you're also setting internal timelines for yourself about how long you'll wait to see sustained change before deciding this person isn't capable of meeting your needs and moving on. The timeline isn't an ultimatum you necessarily share with them unless you're at the end of your patience. It's an internal boundary that protects you from indefinitely investing in someone who may never be able to show up for you. You might decide, I'll give this 6 more months, and if I don't see consistent effort and sustained change by then, I'm done. This timeline allows you to invest fully during that period without resentment because you know you have an exit point. And if the avoidant hasn't demonstrated real change by your deadline, you follow through and leave. This self-respect is what ultimately makes you attractive to avoidants who are capable of commitment while protecting you from those who aren't. Understand not every avoidant can commit. The most important truth about getting avoidants to commit is that not every avoidant is capable of it, at least not in their current state of growth and self-awareness. Some avoidants are too deeply wounded, too defended, too committed to their patterns to do the work required for real relationship no matter what you do or how perfectly you handle them. No strategy, no matter how perfect or well executed, will create commitment in someone who fundamentally cannot provide it because they're not ready or capable. Understanding this protects you from endlessly trying to unlock commitment from someone who doesn't have it to give you. Your job isn't to fix the avoidant or heal their attachment wounds for them. Your job is to be clear about your needs, maintain your boundaries consistently, live your full life with or without them, and see if this particular avoidant can rise to meet you where you are. If they're doing the work on themselves and showing sustained change over time, then patience makes sense and is a worthwhile investment. But if they're stuck in their patterns despite consequences, despite your clarity, despite everything you're doing right, then the loving thing for both of you is to let them go and allow them to continue their journey without you. The ultimate strategy for getting an avoidant to commit is being someone who doesn't need their commitment to be okay, but requires it to stay in the relationship. This paradox creates the conditions where commitment becomes possible for avoidants who are capable of it, while protecting you from wasting your life on those who aren't ready or able. You become the kind of person who's so grounded, so fulfilled, so clear about their worth that you naturally filter for avoidants who are ready to do the work, while remaining completely unbothered by those who can't or won't meet your standards.